We are here once again at MTAC with an absolutely astounding, my most looked forward to guest to talk to.
Hi, it's Samantha Inoue-Harte. Hi, nice to meet ya.
So you are crazy busy with lots of things. You're probably the most varied of all the guests here at MTAC. What are some of the things that you do?
I guess I could kind of start from the beginning. I was an animator since '97. Started in 2D classical animation, drawing paper with pencil and all that good stuff. And then moved into voice acting because one of the producers came into the studio. His name was Joel Sweeney, and he was like, "Wow, you have an annoying voice. You'd be perfect in anime." So I went in. At that time, ADV Films had two offices, one in Houston and one in Austin. Houston and Austin. And I went and auditioned over at the Austin office, and I got a role a couple weeks later, and I've been doing voice acting ever since. And but kind of like juggling at the same time in '97 because I started doing animation. I got sucked into working on my first live action acting role, which wasn't much acting. It was just looking very, very upset and kind of I don't know how to describe it. It was like just act blasé, and that was in Office Space. And I've been in a lot of Mike Judge movies. I was in Idiocracy, Office Space, and got to work on just some random projects here and there, because of that I got into some of the Troublemaker Studios films, was in Sin City, was in Grindhouse, Planet Terror, and Death Proof. And then I got sucked into, hey, you know how to horseback ride, you want to be in a movie? It's called Appaloosa. Hey, we're doing another film, Jonah Hex, want to do stuff in there? Okay. And then from there, somebody was like, hey, we need help doing some gore effects. Could you do that too? And I just never said no, so I guess I started to work on Teeth, doing gore effects, and a couple other movies too. So, yeah.
And then you also have like a production company?
Oh yeah, Dirt. I'm sorry. There are so many things that I do that sometimes I forget. Yeah, I started an animation studio in 2005 plus Psycho Studios because, and actually I was forced to open a studio because I got hired by Spike TV to be an animation director on a series called Fresh Baked Video Games, and for all the animated sequences. And so they were like, well, we were not going to work with you guys unless you come up with a studio name. So we came up with Psycho Studios. And then from there, I met a guy named Paul Alvarado Dykstra, who co-founded Ain't It Cool Inc., which is a really big, famous movie news website. And we partnered up and we did a pilot for Adult Swim for an animated news channel. And then from there, we started Animatropolis, started working with all my connections in Japan, started doing co-productions with the Japanese animation studios. And so now I am on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never not working. And I don't think I could survive if I didn't work as much as I do.
So what are some of the current projects you're working on now?
Well, right now, our big project that we're working on with IDA Films is an animated adaptation of Tad Williams' novel Tail Chaser Song, which is a fantasy novel. It was the first of its kind, which is a all-cat cast, I guess you could say. It's like Lord of the Rings with cats. It's an epic adventure. You follow a cat named Tail Chaser on his journey to find a missing cat who's just happened to be his love interest. And on his way out of our world, because he starts off as a house cat, and he travels out of our world and further into the world of cats, and it kind of turns into this like Alice in Wonderland sort of fantasy adventure with dogs and cats of monsters and things like that. It gets really crazy and it's awesome. And we were like, well, only people that could really do this well would be the Japanese. so
Is there a 6-armed cat?
no 6-armed cat, but we do have some terrifying looking ones. There's the Bone Guard, which are cat monsters that are basically made out of bones, and there's the Tooth Guard. They're kind of like the warrior cat sort of thing. They have red claws and they're colored differently. They're bigger, and then there's a cat, Firefoot, which is a cat god, and he gets engulfed in flames, and he can do magic. And then there's another one, Heart Eater, who kind of looks like Jabba the Hutt, but he's got telekinesis, Kyle. So he can move things, and I guess you could say he kind of reminds me of Darth Vader a little bit. It's like if somebody makes him angry, you can start strangling them with just his mind
There's
powers.
somebody on the side just throwing mice into his mouth.
Yeah. He's a scary looking character.
So, out of all the myriad things that the epic network that you have going on with your life, so it all started with animation.
Yes.
So what led you to that?
Well, when I was living overseas, I lived for, my dad was in the military, and we lived for a long time in Naples, Italy, in the Philippines. We spent a lot of time in Japan because most of my family's there. And so while overseas in Japan, I was always surrounded by anime, and I wasn't actually a big fan of it as a kid. I was a big fan of Disney. And so from as early on as anyone can, that I can remember, if anybody ever asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? One of the things that I would always say that I wanted to be was I wanted to take over the Disney company. So I wanted to be an animator. But, of course, as a kid, you kind of bounce back and forth. I wanted to be Indiana Jones and do archaeology for a while and discover dinosaurs. And I wanted to be an art historian so that way I can go into the Sistine Chapel and help out with the cleaning. And my first memory is actually of the Sistine Chapel. I had a bloody nose. I just remember walking into the Sistine Chapel, had a bloody nose, everybody put me down on the ground, and then I was surrounded by all these nuns, and they were yelling in this language that I had no idea what it was at the time. I was like, what is this? What are they saying? But they're screaming in Italian, and they're tossing all these handkerchiefs at me to staunch the blood flow. But that's actually one of the reasons why I'm scared of nuns. I see a nun and I will run. My heart starts to beat faster. It's that black and white habit, and I'm just like, but that's because I was terrified the first time.
So Sister Act was just a horror movie to you then, huh?
Yeah, I couldn't watch that. No amount of music would make me watch that movie.
Let me move forward and ask my question.
Oh yeah. I will hammer my.
I'm Tony Roll. I'm with Electron Magazine, Electron Show. Hey,
Hi, Miss Meat.
Chocobo.
Oh yeah.
Wait a minute. Now I'm going to ask you this interesting question because I don't want to ask you all the questions that people always ask you and whatever. Okay. Where do you channel Chocobo from? What happens in your heart and your mind to get that to come out?
Ooh.
That's what I really want to know.
Well, I was never really trained as an actor per se. Like I said, I was like literally just kind of shoved into it. But when Final Fantasy Unlimited was at the Austin studio, they actually offered me the role of the little girl character, the main girl character. And then I asked, I was like, oh, okay, cool, a little kid. I can do that. That's not a far stretch for me. And then I asked what the show was, and they said it was Final Fantasy. And I was like, is there a chocobo? And nobody in the studio knew anything about Final Fantasy. I was the only geek out little kid in the studio, and I was like, oh my gosh, is there a chocobo? And they were like, well, yeah, there's a chocobo, it's a bird. And I was like, can I be the chocobo? And they were like, well, no, because you can't be two main characters. And I was like, well, just give my role to somebody else. I want to be the chocobo. And they were like, well, that's like $3,000 pay cut. Are you sure you want to be a chocobo? I'm like, yes, I want to be the chocobo. So from the very get-go, I was always very excited about that. And then they gave me all the other little monsters in the show and the cactuars and whatnot. But when I watched the original Japanese language, I already had this preconceived notion of, it's like when chocobos make their sound, it's more like a quay sound. And I'd always grown up listening to the video game, so hearing the anime version was very different. The Japanese language, it was more guttural sounding. It was an obvious male chocobo. And so I had to come up with something that was between being super male sounding, but also keeping a little bit of that cute video game sound. So that's kind of how I got that voice. I kind of did a mixture, but really.
Did the director allow you to seek out?
Well, yeah. I was the only one that really knew anything about Final Fantasy at the time in the studio, so I knew more. They were actually relying on me to kind of be like, yeah, it sounds like that. They were letting me have a lot of freedom. The only part that was very hard for me was when I had to be every chocobo in a stampede, and then coming up with, you only see it for maybe about a minute in the show. But that was about 6 hours worth of work, because I had to be every single chocobo. And it's not just like, you can't just go in and just be like, at random times. You actually have to pick a specific one, watch the video footage, and then as soon as then they start it again, and then you try and match the mouth flaps of that specific chocobo. And so it's a lot of math. So it's like I'm sitting there, and I'm like staring straight at the TV screen, and I'm just like, and just trying to, as the character opens his mouth, just try and, if it's running and it's like going upward, then I'll actually move my body the same way, so that way it gets that running sound as it's moving. There's another scene in Final Fantasy where the chocobo goes to this planet of cactuars, and that was also very tough for me because the cactuars, I'm basically acting against myself, and I'm fighting a cactuar while I'm the chocobo, and that was tough. But again, I mainly tried to keep it as close to the video game sound as I could without insulting the original animated version recording. So there's that happy medium. If I made it sound too much like the video game, then it probably wouldn't have been as convincing of a role. Because even though it doesn't have any words, it's still, there is some acting involved in it. So, yeah.
Just one more quick question.
Oh,
What's your favorite character that you've ever done?
That I've ever played?
Yeah.
My most recent one that I really fell in love with was Isis from DC Universe Online, which is a MMO video game for Sony. I really liked her because when I started reading for her, they gave me access to the 52 comic, and when you read the whole 52, a large portion of 52 is about Adriana Tomaz, who is Isis, Black Adam's wife. And then there was also a continuation of 52 later on with Black Adam, where, she dies a horrible, horrible death in the story. She gets killed by the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and Black Adam kind of just goes ballistic and tries to destroy Superman and Batman and all them. So in the game, it takes place right after 52. And so I'm still at that very angry point in my life. Or I'm dead, I guess you could say. I'm brought back as a zombie. And I'm angry at the world. And so in order to channel that, you have to read 52. You have to know her backstory. You have to understand that at some point, Felix Faust takes physical advantage of her when she's in this kind of zombie-like state. Bad things happen to this girl. She's sold as a slave to Black Adam. He eventually woos her in 52, but then she's this good girl. She makes this bad guy into an actual likable character. As an anti-hero, he actually starts to do good things, and then just so many bad things just keep happening to her that you can't fault her for becoming an evil witch, I guess you could say. I'm trying not to swear. When she's brought back as a zombie. And so, the goal is that she wants to become human again, but whether or not she can or not is still to be seen because they're still writing her stories. She's, so I've been keeping up a lot with what's been going on, reading the Teen Titans comic, because she's, she went loopy, and she is a force of nature. She can control, the growth of trees, plants, the weather. She is a goddess in the sense of how much power she has. And when somebody has just, been pushed to the point of going over the edge, she wants to come back, but whether or not she's able to, we don't know yet. So, acting out her roles are very emotional, and it's not a feeling that I have naturally. I can't really just sit there and be like, oh, let me get some bitchiness out of my Mary Poppins bag. It's really hard. You have to think about it, and you have to empathize with the character. So that's why I like her a lot.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
We gotta get a call from you after everybody's over.
Okay.
For the radio channel.
So,
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay.
You're going to talk, and I'll just be maybe.
Oh, okay.
so Final Fantasy Unlimited was a Gonzo production.
Yes.
And I know you mentioned before here and there about you've worked with Gonzo before and other.
None of it's announced yet. But if any of you guys go into my Facebook, you might notice that I might make a comment of, oh my gosh, those Gonzo guys, they're driving me crazy or something like that. But yeah.
So what is it like in the studio of any Japanese animation studio?
Well, it's a lot different than the ones here in the U.S. Typically, a lot of the studios that I have worked at or have visited here in the U.S., it's definitely very male-dominated. So the first thing that you notice when you walk into, especially in the smaller studios, is the smell. Smells of old pizza and Mountain Dew cans left and right. The animators are not exactly the cleanliest people in the world. There's sometimes, especially during crunch time, American animators will spend days at the studio and not leave to go home. And so it kind of starts to smell like a convention, inside of a Dance Revolution tournament, in the heat of, an expert level song. It reeks. In Japan, they're more cleanlier over there, less space. We're kind of spoiled here in the U.S. It's like a lot of times we'll have an animator and they might have their own office space. They might have one more person sharing an office space. Like this room right here would probably have like 4 or 5 animators here in the U.S. In Japan, this would be like Studio Hibari. Studio Hibari is a studio in Narima. And they would have like about 20 or so people in a room like this. Yeah. it's spaces, everything builds up in Japan. And so there's not a lot of space, and so everybody's kind of cramped together. The AC is always really cold, and so it's like all the animators have blankets wrapped around them to stay warm. Paper is everywhere. And they use like some of the oldest equipment. I've noticed a lot of like computer keyboards from like 5-10 years ago are still being used. There's a few cubicles that might have like a Cintiq, but for the most part, it's like the computers. They use them until
they break.
Yeah. And even then, it's like, we can still use this. And, here in the U.S., most studios, as soon as they get a big project, the first thing that most studios do is, let's go buy Cintiqs for everyone! And, those are all, 2,000, 2,400 per thing. And so it's just kind of puts things into perspective. As an animator, now that I've been able to see things from both ends of the world, I think that we're a bit spoiled. In our studio, we used to have regular breaks once every 45 minutes for every animator to play a video game or to just like relax and do something. Over there, it's just work. So it's very different. They're also more okay about smoking in their studios.
So which do you prefer? Do you prefer the work, or you want your 45 minutes to play a video game?
I personally like working with the Japanese more. Not because of the work sort of mentality, but because they're more polite. Here, if I tell one of my animators, like, wow, you're pretty rank right now, you should probably go home and take a shower, maybe shave, they're rude. They're just going to be like, no. Or something like that to me. Also, I hear a lot more complaining from animators here, where it's like, I'll be like, okay, the deadline is on this day. It's like, it's kind of like giving an assignment to a high school kid. Here's your book report. Your book report's due in 2 weeks. An animator here might hold off on doing anything for 1 week and then scramble and try and finish by the second week. Whereas in Japan, they just work straight through the entire 2 weeks. So, it's sometimes time management skills here in the U.S. isn't exactly our best forte. So, yeah.
Outside of your many jobs, what other interests do you have?
I really enjoy art history. Eventually, if I ever have time, I would like to go and get a master's in art history. I specifically love the Renaissance, the Quattrocento, to be specific. I enjoy, like I mentioned, the first memory that I had was of the Sistine Chapel. I'm really fascinated by all the you know, like I was able to go see Pompeii as they were still, I mean, they're still excavating to this day, but I was able to watch, it's like, watch things happening in the 80s. You'd go to Pompeii and there were these holes in the ground. And I remember seeing them pouring plaster down these holes. And as a kid, I had no idea what that was. And then a week later, we'd go back and they would dig up the hole and they would pull out this plaster mold, and it would be of a person who had died, and they're in this, crouched kind of fetal position sometimes, and, being able to see, the past clearly like that, doing archaeological work and looking at some of the, looking at how things progress. Art history is constantly changing, seeing, like when the movie The Da Vinci Code came out, I was like, wow, that's not really hitting all the main things, but, they're kind of getting the basic gist of it, but, it's like, it is true to a point where it's like, if you look at any art piece, there's hidden messages in each art piece, and just being able to figure out what, this symbol is. What does this conch shell mean? What does this, what is this Cupid doing here? And, what's going on? What is the meaning of this bush? Being able to decipher all of these things in art, it's really fascinating. I grew up watching Sister Wendy, which ironically enough scared me because she was a nun, but at the same time, it's like she explained things in such a way that was just fascinating. I think it was her face. The way she talked and the way that she kind of almost, you can tell she had a crush on Jesus. Because she'd be like talking about, it's like, oh, and here we're looking at, just look at his muscles. Oh, those, it's like, and it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, and I'm just kind of starting to go through puberty, and I'm starting to be like, yeah, Jesus is pretty ripped. What's wrong with you there, and just kind of watching that, really inspired me. My dad was really big into making me go to museums. And I'm probably one of the boringest persons you'll ever meet, because we'd go into a museum and I'd sit there and I'd explain everything about every statue, every painting in there, and I'd tell the story. And one person said, "Okay, go ahead, Uncle, let's tell your story." And so I'll explain everything that goes on in every painting. I love it. I can't talk much more. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm dorking out.
So all the stuff about the painting stuff, are there chances that you get to bring all this into your work?
Oh yes. Every once in a while, what'll happen is, if we're doing an animation and it's a period piece per se, a lot of times a studio might actually ask me to come in and look at the costuming, look at the technology that's being depicted, and I'll sit there and I'll say, it's like, wait, no, you can't use that because that didn't exist back then. It's like, it would be more like this. Or, the clothing would not be like that, that didn't come until 10 years later. And, so I like to watch things that have, like, Samurai X, good example. I worked on that as a voice actor, but I also got to help train a lot of the voice actors on how to pronounce the names and the words and the places, and explained about, like, the history of the Meiji era to a lot of the voice actors, so that way they can actually understand what the story is about and why there's so much, drama going on in that show. I've been able to, just being able to explain things makes the actor understand more about what's going on, so that way they can perform better for that show. I get asked to consult a lot. Sometimes, things like color or art techniques that were developed in the Renaissance, we'll incorporate that into our schemes. Like for Tail Chaser's song, we're very specific about, our character is orange. The complementary color of orange, would be a mixture of different blues and purples and cooler colors. You want cooler colors so that way the character pops out more for the audience. And so there's certain scenes that we would be very deliberate in our decisions on, whether it's color, line quality, things like that. And I get that information because of my knowledge in the art history realm. But, I'm not an expert in art history. I'm still learning. I'm always learning. But, I hope to never stop learning. But, I try and use what I know. And if I don't know something, I'll always refer to somebody who does know.
Who is the person that might have had the biggest impact on your career? I know there's a lot of careers here, so you
my dad always said that when you go into any sort of job, to never turn anything down just because I don't know what's going to happen. And I really took that to heart. A lot of the jobs that I've been able to do has been because I don't say no. It's kind of like the cereal commercial. Hey, Mikey, he'll eat anything. It's like I'm kind of the same way. It's like, oh, just ask Sammy; she'll do anything. That's I kind of developed a reputation for that. So people would just come up to me and they'll be like, hey, I need to do this. Do you know how to do that? And I'll be like, well, no, but I'll do it. I'll learn. And, it's like whether it's looking up tutorials on YouTube or grabbing somebody that does know how to do it or, asking if they're willing to train me to do it. Different, within the entertainment industry, there's more of a willingness to train people if you exhibit the desire. If somebody comes up to you and says, hey, would you be willing to drive this car for this scene? There might be a stunt involved. And if you sit there and you say no, then they're probably not ever going to ask you again. Whereas, when they came up to me, they were like, hey, would you be willing to drive this car? And there might be a flip somewhere. And I'll be like, sure? Is it safe? And they're like, yeah, it'll be safe. Oh, okay, count me in. And then so after doing that, they start to ask you more. Can you do that again? Except this time doing this. And that's how it grows.
So the young kids that have enjoyed the anime and the programs you've been a part of, what works of art could you suggest that they see that would bring out that passion that came out in you for art and for art history?
I would definitely, if you're a big anime fan per se, I would definitely look at some of the ukiyo-e artists. Ukiyo-e is Japanese woodblock prints. The influence of the style of the hair, the clothing, the amount of detail, highly influenced a lot of anime. And of the ukiyo-e artists that I would definitely suggest Hokusai, Hiroshige, Utamaru for his Bijinga series, which is the courtesan images that he came up with. Movies, like even TV shows, like watching Thundercats or watching Last Unicorn, whenever you see water depicted, you can actually do a comparison of the water animation and look at the ukiyo-e print, and it's almost exactly alike. I would highly suggest, for anime again, looking at Art Nouveau artists, especially Alphonse Marie Mucha. Some people pronounce it Mucha. He was very, he is kind of like, whenever you think of Nouveau, he's kind of like the first artist that comes to mind. But his artwork has, whenever he depicts his female characters and they have long, luscious hair, it almost looks like spaghetti because it's so intricate. And you compare that to anime characters with their long, luscious hair, and it's very similar. He used a lot of hard-edged outlines for all the contours of his characters that he would draw, and you look at the hard outlines of a lot of anime characters, and it's very similar. You can tell right away that there is that influence there. For different like Disney movies, if you watch Sleeping Beauty and if you look at the backgrounds with the trees and the forests in the Disney Sleeping Beauty, you might look at some of the late Quattrocento Renaissance artwork. Where the backgrounds are always very high detail, and if you go to the Uffizi Museum and you see some of the, it's like there's a very famous, the Medicis really patroned a lot of artwork, and but when you look at the backgrounds of those and you compare them to the backgrounds in Sleeping Beauty, it's almost a mirror copy. The trees, the leaves, very similar patterns. So really there isn't one form of artwork to look at, per se, to when it comes to animation and influences. But definitely, just looking at art in general and having a general knowledge of, oh, that's mannerism, or oh, that's impressionism. Just having a general knowledge will make things a little bit easier.
If you had the opportunity to work with any animator, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh my. I could take the easy route and say Hayao Miyazaki, but I don't want to go that route. I don't want to take the easy route. I would really... This is tough. This is a tough question. I would really love to work with Winsor McCay. Winsor McCay is kind of like the grandfather of animation. He was one of the great pioneers. He created the comic series Little Nemo in Slumberland. He is the reason why animation is what it is today. One of my favorite ones that he did was the Centaurs. The other one that I really enjoyed was watching The Sinking of the Lusitania, which is a 12-minute short, and it's literally, you watch it, and it's almost, even though it's kind of propaganda-ish, the quality of the animation as you see this luxurious ship sinking into the waters and seeing the people falling out and drowning, he animated every little portion of this, and the quality of the movements, everything is very smooth. There's a high frame rate. The amount of detail is just insanely crazy. I mean, it's like Squidbillies or 12-ounce mouse doesn't hold a candle to the amount of detail that is involved in this. And only somebody who's passionate enough would be able to animate a sinking ship. That's 12 minutes of drawing a sinking ship is a bit excessive, for most Americans. But yeah, that's just me. He was amazing.
So, board games. We hear you like board games.
I love board games. I'm a big, when it comes to board games, if you go out with a bunch of people, out to dinner or something like that, or you see families going out and just doing things, half of the people in a group will be on their cell phones, clicking away, texting with people, and there's no connection anymore. People have kind of become antisocial, to the point where it's almost awkward. It's like, that you can't. I'm really bad with my cell phone. I can't go anywhere without my cell phone. If you take away my cell phone, I would probably have a panic attack. But I see that there is that problem, and families are kind of not being families anymore. And so, to me, having a board game, getting a whole bunch of people together, it kind of, put the cell phones away. Play a 3-hour game of Arkham Asylum or something like that. Play Zombicide. You kind of you kind of have more interaction with people. Also, I have a hard time paying attention. And so tabletop gaming allows me to focus on things and strategize. I'm obviously not the best player in the world, but, I enjoy the camaraderie that it brings. I used to play Magic the Gathering back in the early 90s. I stopped playing after Ice Ages. Because the counters, I couldn't understand the counters. They were starting to make things too confusing. And Fallen Empires, that deck just sucked. So I stopped playing after that, and I didn't get back into tabletop gaming until just recently, actually. And I found that when you're having a stressful day at work, and you just get in front of a tabletop game, and you get into these stories, it just makes life so much more calm. It's like you can drop all of your worries aside and just have fun, and I like that very much.
So, what's in your board game collection?
Oh my. Well, I've got a huge zombie collection. So, zombie dice. I've got the 3 zombie sides, so there's the one with the jail and one with the mall and the regular one. I've got Dead Panic, but then I also have Ticket to Ride. There's the Europe, there's the Asia, there's India, and then there's Small World, Smash Up, King of Tokyo. I like the horror games a lot, so any of those horror games, I've got those. They take forever to play those, so we have to plan in advance and be like, it's gonna say it's 3 hours, but we've got 4 people who've never played this before, so that means it's gonna be 6. We just got oh snap, I just forgot it. I told you guys just as I was walking in.
Takenoko?
Oh yeah, I got Takenoko. I love Takenoko. That one's one of my go-to games when I just don't want to think. And my collection is growing every couple of weeks. So there's it's really bad. Oh, what is that? There's a backstabbing game which is really fun. I forgot the name of it. Oh snap! Oh. There's Avalon, Mice and Mystics. That was fun. There's one that I just got over at Target, and everybody's been playing it. It's Pandemic. Got Pandemic. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's like I'm on the spot, so I'm like trying to remember, and I can't remember it all. But I have them all separated into sections. One of my favorite ones is an older one called 221B Baker Street.
Oh, wow.
That one is like Clue, but on crack. So, it's like Clue, it's a Colonel Mustard in the library with a canister. No, it's a little bit more drawn out than that. It's like, it came out in the 70s. The box is ancient. It is so old, and you look at it and you're just like, nobody ever wants to play it, but when you do play it, people start to yell at each other, and you get nerd rage, and you're just like, no! There's Nuclear Escalation. That one's fun. And then Acquire. Have you ever played Acquire? Acquire is like stock market sort of game where it's like you have to build companies and then you have to collapse companies and companies absorb into other companies, and it's addictive. It's addictive. And so you have to know math and you have to figure out how many stocks did that guy buy and how many did he buy of that same stock and who needs to become majority shareholder. And, it's a lot of fun. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Any questions?
Yes, and this is, well, you're going to have a variety to choose from, but what project that you've worked on would most benefit from the addition of a giant robot?
Darn it, there's one project I can't announce it yet. But it has a ton of giant robots.
Well, that did not originally have giant robots.
Oh, okay.
Let's go then.
If there was a giant robot, I think that Planet Terror, Grindhouse, would have really benefited with a giant robot.
I'll do that.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with zombies and a giant robot.
It would make it really easy to step on the zombies.
Yes.
Yeah.
With the giant robot.
But not on me. I was a zombie. I don't want to be stepped on.
Well, what if...
I just want to hug you with my teeth.
I'll accept that.
Yay! No.
So, if there was any sort of final message you want to send out to the people of the internet or whoever happens to be listening or reading or watching or what have you, what would that message be?
Yeah, and I'm only saying this because I also teach. I used to teach at several colleges, and I'm not that much older than a lot of the students that I teach, but I learned how to write cursive and it's like know my basic math and know how to write a thesis paper and know what a dangling participle is and all that good stuff. But I do notice that when I was teaching at several colleges that I ended up having to give up on giving written assignments because people forgot, apparently, from the time I graduated, people forgot how to write in cursive and how to write full sentences. So my message is to keep getting an education. Don't, stay at school, learn how to write. Don't rely on Google or Wikipedia for any of your essays. Please don't. Don't copy from Wikipedia and turn that in as your book report. And don't be surprised if somebody like me gives you an F for that. I really like to push education. I'm not the smartest tool, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to smarts, but I definitely have noticed that it's like, and there is that problem is happening. It's becoming prevalent, and as a teacher, being told you have to give a certain number of A's in a classroom, and then when a whole entire classroom does not deserve an A. It's tough. It's very tough, and it is heartbreaking, which is the reason why I kind of stepped away from teaching. I got burnt out from it. So don't burn out your teachers. Study, learn stuff, because it will actually help out when you're script writing, when you're developing stories with a Japanese animation studio, when you are having to create a whole world. The more you know, the more you understand about science and math and history and all that stuff will only just help you. So yeah, stay in school. And when it comes to women in the animation industry, don't let those boys bully you. Get in the industry. I would like more women in the industry, because animation studios here in the U.S., they smell bad. So we need more women to make these boys shave every once in a while. That would rock.
Well, you have certainly rocked.
Thank you.
So thank you for talking to us. And yeah, thanks.
Oh, thank you. This is my first MTAC. Oh my gosh. This has been amazing. I really thank everyone for having me here. And